Welcome back, everybody. We are in the coach's corner with the head coach, Coach Britt of the University of Charleston, West Virginia. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, doing great, Josh. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, no problem. You are making up for me celebrating No Shave November a couple months early. So you are nice and clean shaven there. All right, so I wanted to get, we had talked about the other day. I saw on social media the initiative to get all of your boys registered to vote, and so definitely want to talk about that. But first, not to confuse your school with the University of Charleston in South Carolina. So who are you guys, and where exactly are you?
Yeah, so we are the University of Charleston in West Virginia, different than the College of Charleston. It's same colors, so it's commonly misconstrued. But we're a Division II school in the capital of West Virginia, so we're about an hour east of Huntingdon, right there. Sort of, they call it the tri-state between Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. We're in the capital city, right on the Kanawha River. Right across from the Capitol building and the governor's mansion. So we're a D2 school here, in the heart of our state. And we play in the Mountain East Conference. We've been very fortunate since 2017 to be the winningest program in our state, regardless of division or level. We went to a super regional in 2019. We were one game away from the College World Series. And so, pretty fortunate to be blessed in a great state and in a great location. And so, yeah, we're here in the heart of West Virginia.
Those guys are going to kill me for calling them the University of Charleston when I know way better. So how are you guys so good? Where are you pulling players from?
Yeah, well, I think, being a private school here in the state, it allows us to reach into a lot of different pockets. Columbus, Ohio is 3 hours away. Cincinnati is about 3.5. You got Pittsburgh 3 hours away, 4 from like a Charlotte area. And then even here in the Kanawha Valley, whether it's the southern part of the state or more like Morgantown area, Bridgeport, the eastern and northern panhandles, there's some guys running around here in the state as well. And so for us, it's just been really focusing our recruiting efforts on areas where, we can find Division I caliber players that are interested in coming and seeing what we have to offer. And that are mature enough to, overlook maybe the level and say, hey, I'm going to get a Division I experience. We're just going to play a D2 schedule. And I think that at the University of Charleston, that's what we're capable of providing. And hopefully that's the type of experience that we provide for our student athletes every day.
So, yeah, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people get confused. They just assume Division II is maybe a lower talent, or the metrics are not as good as Division I recruits when you go out there. But that is definitely not the case, especially at the higher end Division II programs like yourself. But how do you sell that to a kid? I mean, you said, the ones that are mature enough, but at the same time, aren't there some that you got to try to convince, like, hey, this is okay to do Division II?
Sure, absolutely. I think that's the challenge. And I wasn't probably mature enough coming out of high school to say that myself. I was like anybody that wants to have that Division I moniker, and I coached at the Division I level for 3 years, and so I understand the draw. I think for us, it's helping families understand that not all Division I programs are created equal. Just like at any level, there's going to be NAIAs that have different levels of resources, Division IIIs, and so on and so forth. And so for us, it's, hey, what kind of resources can we put in our players' hands? What can we do to create what we believe is a holistic student-athlete experience that will allow them to, really flourish and become the student-athlete that they were created to be? And so, really it's us doing a good job as a staff, and we're fortunate. We have, we believe, the largest Division II staff in the country. We have 9 people on our staff, 4, 5 coaches, and then 4 support staff members. And so we're fortunate to be able to provide our players with technology like Rapsodo, Win Reality, virtual reality, TrackMan, but then also to surround them with great people, great teachers, and to be able to provide that experience. So, I think that's the biggest thing, is just being able to sort of peel back the onion of our program and showcase what we have to offer. And a lot of times, if we can get them on campus, I think those families really sort of start to see like, hey, You know, they've got a brand new $5.2 million turf complex. They play at the Pro Park downtown. They've got all these resources. And so I think if we can get them on campus, a lot of times, you know, the school kind of just sells itself.
I hear a lot of Division II coaches talk about the development at the Division II level and how, come here because you're going to get the development. And it's not a knock on Division I programs. I think the detail that's left out a lot of times when coaches are saying that is exactly what you just said. We're able to have a larger staff. You've been at both levels. So can you explain the difference in the size of the staff and how that does make such a big difference to the players that you bring in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the Division I level, like I was an ops guy for a year, and then I was a volunteer for 2 years. And I just remember, like, even when I moved into the volunteer role, I was responsible for a position group. I assisted on the offensive side. I was responsible for the field maintenance, and I was doing the operations because we never hired somebody else. And so, our recruiting coordinator, he was everywhere. He was being stretched so thin. Whereas here, it allows young people that are just looking for that foot in the door experience. They can really become an expert on one area of the program. Like my hitting coach, his responsibility off the field is summer ball placement. But other than that, his main responsibility is to work with our hitters and to develop our offense. Same thing with our pitching coach. Like he's our assistant head coach. If something happens to me, he takes the ball and runs with it. But he is the head coach of the pitching staff. And I want him to be able to focus on that all the time. So, I think the player development thing is, and I don't want to come off as overplaying it, but I think it's somewhat overrated. Like when we talk about all these resources and tools, we're talking about player assessment. You got to have great individuals that can develop players. So Rapsodo is great, but if you don't know how to use it effectively, then you're really not developing your players. And so for us, we've really made an effort to educate our staff and to get them to really become experts in a certain area or a certain technology so that they can help our players understand the data better, understand how they need to move their body more efficiently. And I think you can get that at any level. So I don't want to sit here and say that Division I doesn't do a great job. I know like Charlotte, I see all the stuff that they post. I know Coach Simmons a little bit from when I was at Middle Tennessee and he was at Charlotte. Like they do an unbelievable job with their player development, but it's what can you do taking that technology, taking those assessment tools, and then how can you relate it to the players so they can understand it and move forward as an athlete?
Yeah, well, that's the hometown team where I am, 49ers. I try not to be biased, but their facility is pretty awesome. The new stuff they got going on, they got a good group there for sure. I love what you said there about, because we talk so much about technology, but it's not the technology that develops you. It's the people that develop you. It just leads to that opportunity. What's your favorite piece of technology to use, though?
Well, I think from a baseball fan or a player's perspective, I mean, the virtual reality system that we have is awesome. Win Reality's done such a great job bringing that in. I think TrackMan is probably the most complete thing that we have. And I'm fortunate that I've got our director of player development, Alec Porterfield. He's interned with 3 different major league organizations during his career. So his background is working strictly with TrackMan. He understands how to use it way more than I ever could myself. So I think TrackMan is just cool to look at. The Win Reality is fun to put on, but I think it does do a great job for our players with advanced scouting. At our level, we don't have, not everybody's on Synergy. It's really hard to find video on teams. And so for us, if we can say, hey, we're going to face a high 3/4 arm slot, high velo 3-pitch mix guy, we can put that into Win Reality, and our guys can at least try to get a visual of what they're going to see on the weekend. Whereas, I know we can't pull up the Synergy, we can't pull up the video on a lot of those arms. So, I think that's been a really great tool for our offensive players.
I'd imagine that's attractive to recruits who are coming and seeing the place, correct?
I think it has some flash to it, sure.
Right. And I think that We've just been having this conversation because I've been highlighting some D2 facilities and on all the social media platforms that I use, and you always get the people that say, don't go to the facilities, facilities don't matter, it's about the people. Now, I definitely agree with the second part of that, that it's about the people. However, the first part of that, I think facilities absolutely 100% matter, and that's a very naive statement. Would you agree with me on that? Do facilities matter more than what people think?
I think it's a learning environment. So we call anywhere where we learn, we call it a classroom. So you have your baseball classroom, you have your academic classroom, you have your training environment or your training classroom. And so, I do believe, like, if you're blessed to have resources such as a turf field, it's one less thing you have to worry about. Like, our policy is, if it's above 0 degrees, we're going to be outside in some capacity. We're not going to hit, obviously, but we'll run bases, we'll throw, we're going to do defensive work. Last year we did fly ball communication, and there was snow coming down in January. And for us, having that resource, it's one less thing you have to worry about. I think that definitely matters. I wouldn't say it's the most important thing, but anytime that you can create a great learning environment for your players, I'm all for that. And I think it definitely matters when you talk about student athlete experience.
Right. I think that's a big deal. It does matter because it matters to the players. Even if you as a coach feel like, oh, I don't need it to develop, well, they want to go to a place like that in this day and age. They want that stuff. So let me change gears on you here. Okay. I'm going to go right here into my Fox or CNN or MSNBC studio now, whichever one people prefer. You guys did something very unique recently that I haven't seen. I'm sure other teams probably do it, I would hope. But I saw on social media, on Twitter, that you had all of your boys sitting down and get them registered to vote in the upcoming election. How did that idea come up?
Yeah, that was something that, and again, it goes back to having a big staff and a staff of what we call self-starters. I want people that can wake up in the morning and make their own coffee, like they're not waiting for direction. And so our director of, or our development coach, Beth Warner is her name. She works with our infielders. She'll work on the offensive side of the ball, but then her off-field responsibility is our academics and our community service, which are 2 of the 3 pillars or core values of our program. And so she brought up the idea, and, I thought it was fantastic. I'm a former U.S. history teacher. I know you are as well. You got the social studies background. I studied political science in college. And so, I just think it's so important, and many times we gloss over it. So in our baseball classroom, we're trying to create critical thinkers that can collaborate, that can problem solve, and make decisions. So I'm not really trying to tell our guys who to vote for, but I do want them to engage with this process, engage with their right as a citizen to learn about the candidates that we have, and to go out and make a critical, informed decision on who they want to represent us. And I think with 2020 and the year that we've had, leadership is so important. And, we're finding that out, every day with all the different information that's coming in on both sides. We need effective leadership. And that goes for anything. And so I think I want our guys to engage with this process, and by being registered to vote, requesting their absentee ballots if they're from out of town, it gives them a great opportunity, at least a spark, to get involved with this process and engage with the voting decision.
How many of them had to register to vote or request absentee ballots, and versus how many of your guys were already set? Coach, I already got all that done.
I'd say it was probably 75% still had to register to vote. You had about 25% that were already registered. So it was sort of eye-opening for us as a coaching staff to sit there and say, wow, these kids, some of them 21, 22 years old, probably could have voted in the last election and didn't. And many times they just weren't aware of it. It's not high on the priority list. And, again, I think our mission is to create what we call a transcendent student athlete experience. We're trying to create something that's bigger, broader, deeper than just what happens between those white lines. And so we've got to have more of a worldly, holistic view. And they're 20, 21-year-olds. Like, they're not thinking about voting. But if we can bring that into our baseball classroom, if we can educate them and begin to help them think about that process, I think it's only going to serve them down the road when they get out of here.
What was the reaction of the group when were they like, Coach, why are we doing this? I mean, or were they stoked? Were they a little bit kind of in the middle? What was their reaction when you said, here's what we're going to do this week?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to recruiting, which I know sounds crazy to say, but we're very upfront, brutally honest about what our experience entails. And so, if you're not committed to being successful in the classroom, which I know is cliche, but if you're not committed to the baseball classroom, if you're not committed to the community service and all the other things that we try to do for our student athletes, you're probably not going to work out here. So our guys were really, I think, excited about it. Didn't take up a whole lot of their day, which I try to be pretty mindful of their time. I want them to be able to navigate time effectively throughout the course of their day. So I think overall they were generally curious about it, excited about it. You're always going to have some guys that are saying, why are we doing this? But that's okay. I want them to question that. And it goes back to, hey, we're not trying to tell you who to vote for. We just want to make this platform available to you so that you can make the most informed decision possible.
The knock on young voters is going to be that they're not informed well enough to make good decisions that are going to affect adults and families and, taxes and all this kind of stuff. They have the right to vote because they can be put into the military. That's really the reason 18, 19-year-olds were given the right to vote. How do you educate them? Do you feel like it's your job to educate them, or how are you going to go about, for those guys that are going to vote, helping them make an informed decision?
Yeah. Well, so our baseball classroom, every week throughout the fall, we have a theme that we really talk about. And with everything going on in the world, like last week, our theme was unity and empathy. So every thought of the day that we had on our training plan, every baseball classroom session, we tried to bring in some different quotes, some different videos and articles that our guys would look at, and then we would discuss it as a group. And so I think as we move into the next chapter before the election, our job is to try to get guys to, like I said earlier, think critically about the issues at hand. And so what that might look like is us bringing in an article and saying, okay, not telling them who it was written by or what side it supports, and then getting them to dissect that article, talk about it with their small group. And then at the end, we might share with them like, hey, this is a really far left or a really far right article. And then we could bring them back to and show them a more moderate video or a more moderate interview that might take place, and really just trying to get them to, I think, and this is our society, but we've grown up and our kids have grown up in a Twitter society where they're getting everything in 240 characters or less. And so it's very easy for people to read the headline, but not read the article. And so we've got to get our guys to really dig a little bit deeper, go below the surface level, and to think beyond just the headline. And so I think that's our job as coaches, not to persuade, not to move in more right or more left direction, but to get those guys to read below the headline and really dig in and make decisions for themselves, because that's what they're going to be tasked to do when they're 25, 30, 35 years old.
Right. And the thing about it is I just remember teaching, and we think that the elections that we make and the decisions we make right now are what's going to affect us right now. But it's usually the presidents or the politicians that we pick and the policies that they put in place will really affect the next generation more than it'll affect the immediate. And so the kids, they might be 18, 19, 20, but they don't realize that what might happen in this election or the next election could put into place policies that they're going to be dealing with, to paying back student loans or to buying their first house or all those kinds of things. So I think it's awesome what you did, what you guys are doing with the group. How difficult, how time consuming was this if other teams are looking at it saying, hey, we want to do this. How do we make this happen?
Yeah, not time consuming really at all. I think what we did, Coach Warner, she put together each state where we had players. She went on and researched and put together the links to their voting registration sites. And then she basically met with small groups throughout one day. So you were there for about 45 minutes at the most. That's if you had to register and do an absentee ballot. But she basically laid it out for all the guys. And then what she did on her end is she packaged it up in an envelope. We stamped it. We had our guys. We actually taught them how to address envelopes, because you'd be surprised that some kids don't know how to do that with handwritten notes and things.
It's crazy. I never thought of that. But yeah, I guess. I mean, everything's through email nowadays, or texting, or whatever.
Yeah. So we sort of tie it into like the power of a handwritten note and how we can, utilize that to leverage our relationships down the road as well. So those would be the most time-consuming aspects, but it was financially feasible. We just had to buy about 50 stamps and 50 envelopes, and we printed off those absentee ballots, and we tried to just make it very easy and accessible for those guys. All they had to do was show up, fill out that stuff, and then they were good to go.
So did they all have to register to vote? Not obviously you're not going to make them vote or not vote, but did you make them all at least get registered and get that card for the future?
We did, yeah. So every player in our program went ahead and registered to vote, and then we went ahead and did absentee ballots for them. If they don't want to vote, that is their choice. I think our job is, I always think back to when I was teaching history, like the best classes I had is when the class ended and half the class thought I was Republican and half the class thought I was a Democrat. And so it's sort of the same model that we want to have here. Is I want to play devil's advocate. I want to challenge our guys to think critically and think deep about the issues and situations at hand. And so they may not vote on November 3rd. We're going to give them the day off. So everybody in our athletic department will have that day off so that they can go vote. I'm going to encourage them to use their voice to go and vote. But other than that, I'm not gonna make them.
Let's finish up on a baseball question here. Let's see, what can I make my background now? We'll go here. Okay, so we're back to baseball. Finish up with a baseball question. We are in the COVID era, hopefully getting towards the back end or the post-COVID era, but you are back on the field now. What does practice look like? You told me that it's much different than before.
It's a blessing to be back on the field. And, I think March 12th was a day like I'll never forget in my career, as I'm sure many of us in this profession, would feel the same way. But yeah, so we're in basically what we call pods. And so it's part of the NCAA's re-socialization plan. So basically the pod has to stay the same. And really it's meant to help with contact tracing if somebody were to test positive. I can't speak enough to what our university has done in preparation, trying to mitigate the risks. We tested everybody when they got back on campus. Masks are mandatory at training for the entire training session. And so, it does look different, but I do think it's given us an opportunity to really dive in with players on a very individual level, get to know them, get to know the other people in their groups. We've mixed some newcomers with some upperclassmen, and I think it's been a really neat deal. I can't wait to get into our 45-day window where we can do some full team training, hopefully, and some scrimmage work and things of that nature. But for the time being, to throw a ball, to hit a fungo, it's a blessing, and I'm excited for our players. I'm excited for our program, and we're just sort of, I know it's cliche, but taking it a day at a time and just trying to savor every moment, because we know how quickly it can disappear.
So I know we're trying to take it a day at a time, but I'm going to look ahead, because I know a lot of my audience is looking ahead to from the high school to the college level. How do you see what has taken place, what is taking place, affecting, let's move past the current seniors almost, because they have a good idea of where they stand and what they need to do. But like the 22s and the 23s, those guys in the middle of their high school years right now, trying to see, okay, what's the long-term effect going to be? Any idea on your end? Because again, you've been at both of the top levels there.
Yeah, I think it changes. It'll probably change about 3 more times between now and the time this interview even airs. I think it changes day to day. But for those younger guys, I really think that it just means that they've got to do a great job of creating exposure opportunities for themselves. You know, we're at a point in our world and in our society where you have more platforms to communicate who you are as a person and as a player than at any other point in time in our history. And I think college coaches, we have seen now that, yes, you can recruit via video. Softball coaches have been doing it for years. And so now, you know, we're having to do some of that live stream, web stream stuff. I think who you play for begins to matter more because of the relationship aspect. And, you know, we're more reliant on high school coaches, which is kind of a reversal to what it was like almost 10, 15 years ago. You know, we're reliant on high school and travel coaches probably more than we ever have been in our career, because they're with them way more than we ever can be in the recruiting process. So I think the exposure opportunities are really important for those younger guys. And that doesn't just mean getting out there, posting videos, you know, but it also means who you play for, how you represent yourself, and the people that you associate yourself with from a coaching standpoint and from your teammates standpoint. Because if you're around other great players, you know, those opportunities are probably going to present themselves more than if you're just a big fish in a small pond on some travel team. So, you know, I would say those are the two biggest things for the 22s, 3s, and 4s is just find ways to put yourself out there in a genuine way and surround yourself with great people.
It's going to be fun to watch because parity's already growing, but there's going to be some very random programs that do some big things because we are having to recruit off video. So it's going to be fun to watch. You know, like in basketball, you always see the Cinderella teams. In baseball, I feel like you don't see that as much, but I think we're going to with the way recruiting had to work out this summer. Hopefully it doesn't have to go on this way much longer. But bottom line, thank you so much for coming on. Excellent job with what you are doing over there, and I hope that it creates some awareness both on and off the field, specifically the voting stuff. That is awesome, getting you guys registered to vote. Thank you for coming on and talking about that, and hopefully you get your full team back at a practice soon, Coach.
Looking forward to it. Thanks for the time, Josh.